Hey, I'm Liz from No Trace, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make a little pouch with a little lobster claw clasp that you can clip onto your backpack or your purse and use for some of those things that you want to be able to grab really easily. My kids love to use these pouches to clip a mask onto their backpack and kind of keep it clean, keep it from getting too beat up inside their bag. This project is really beginner friendly, it's perfect for kids, and it's also a really great way to use up some of your smaller scraps of fabric. I have a free pattern to make this little pouch on my website, so if you want the exact size that I've made right here, I'm going to put a link below so you can get this free pattern. Otherwise, I'll also show you how to create this pattern if you just want to make one up on your own. Let's make a pouch! In order to make your mask pouch, you're going to first need to go online and download this super simple pattern so that you get the pattern piece for making your mask pouch. And the way this pattern piece works is that you cut out these two large shapes and then join them, tape them together so that A meets B. And you'll have a pattern piece that looks like this. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can also just kind of eyeball this. So this is about 12¼ inches tall, and it's about 3¼ inches wide, and then you can create your triangular line there. You're also going to need one piece of fabric that measures 3 inches by 4 inches. So you can just cut and measure that out as well. And then you'll need a little lobster claw, and you'll need the pieces to attach the snap. So the way your pattern piece works is that you're going to place your fabric and fold it, and then put the pattern piece on top of your fabric, and then cut your fabric down to size, making sure that your folded line goes from the pointy part down. And you want to do that for 2 pieces of fabric. So I've already cut out those 2 pieces. One of these pieces will be the outer layer, and one of these pieces will be the inner layer of my pouch. And you'll also need to cut out your 3×4 rectangle as well. And what I like to do is actually start with this, and we're going to take this over to the iron, and we're going to fold it in half and press it so that it's now 2×3 instead of 4×3. All right, so just fold it over and press it so that it's now 2 inches by 3 inches. And then you're going to open it and fold it towards the center crease. Okay, so now it's 1 inch by 3 inch. And go ahead and press that down. So you're folding it in half and then folding it towards the center and pressing it so that you now have a little 1×3 inch strap. And this is going to go on the lobster claw. And once it's ironed, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch it on both sides. You can skip this step, and actually when I teach kiddos how to make these pouches, we skip this step, but it does give it a nice little polished look. So just go ahead and stitch real close to the edge on both sides. So both sides of the strap are top stitched, and now we're going to put the lobster claw onto the strap. Just should fit right on there. As long as it's a 1 inch lobster claw, it'll slide right onto your strap. And then we're going to put a zipper foot on our machine, and we're going to stitch right along the side, right along the edge of the lobster claw to really lock this in place. So my zipper foot is in position, and then I'm just going to slide this underneath and start not right on the edge, but just sort of inside a little bit, and go all the way down and then all the way back. And then down one more time. so that we have 3 rows of stitches and our lobster claw won't wiggle around at all on us. So now that our lobster claw strap is ready, we're going to put our 2 pieces of fabric together with the right sides facing. So just line them up on top of each other. And what we're going to be doing is inserting the lobster claw in between the layers. And we're going to be stitching all the way around our pouch, but you want to leave an opening on one of the long sides. So we'll stitch all the way around and leave about a 4-inch opening. And in terms of where to put your lobster claw, you can kind of eyeball how your pouch is going to turn out by folding it up and then folding the top flap down. And you can kind of get a rough idea of how your pouch is going to turn out, and make sure that the claw is kind of near the top. It doesn't need to be right at the very top of your where your flap folds over, but you want it near that flap, just like so. And once you've decided where you want the lobster claw, go ahead and put a pin in that spot. And then you'll probably want to add a few more pins just so that your fabric doesn't wiggle around on you when you go to sew. And then if you want to get your tailor's chalk, you can mark out the spot where you're not going to sew, or just put 2 pins there to kind of signify, don't sew here, leave that open. And then a couple pins up top. And if you want to insert one of your little personal tags, like I like to for no trace, that can go right under the lobster claw. And go ahead and pin that in place. And then we'll take this to the machine, and we have a regular presser foot back on the machine, and we'll stitch all the way around. I'm going to start right below my pins, and I'm going to use about a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and do a little back stitch at the beginning. So I'm coming up on the strap, and one thing I want to point out is that you want to make sure to stitch over the strap at least 2 or 3 times so that it doesn't slide out of your pouch. I'm gonna go over it once, and then back stitch, and then go over it again. And then as you get back to your double pins, or maybe the spot that you marked with tailor's chalk, you'll just get close to the pins, do a back stitch, and stop so that you have that 4-inch opening. Okay, we'll take it off the machine, and we can take out these pins. And now you can decide, I would probably trim off a little bit of the extra fabric from around the edges, but that is optional. You don't absolutely have to do that. I'm just gonna trim off the corners so we can get kind of crisper corners on the bag. And I'm also gonna trim off a little bit of the extra lobster claw strap. And this is all organic cotton and organic cotton thread, so this can either go into my compost, or I can save it in my little bag of scraps and use it as stuffing or for some other future project. So I always save these little bits. And now go ahead and turn it right side out. And you might want a chopstick for this part. And just get those corners pushed all the way out. I'm realizing I put my tag in pointing in the wrong direction there. So it's gonna be pointed to the back. Oops, that's okay though. And once your corners are pushed out really nicely with a chopstick or a pencil, go ahead and press the seam so that it lays nice and flat. And you'll especially want to press the opening so that it is lined up on both sides, and you'll be able to stitch it closed easily in the next step. So just go ahead and press that. So once this is turned right side out and all of your corners are poked out really nicely with a chopstick, you're going to want to do a straight stitch just along this bottom flat edge of the pouch, just like that. And you don't need to do a back stitch at the start or stop because we're going to go over that row of stitches again in the next step. So the next step is to bring the bottom flap up over the lobster claw strap area, and then fold the top flap down and just make sure that your pouch is looking the way you want it to look. Okay, and once you're sure, you can pin or clip these two sides in place, or you can just take it over to your machine and stitch all along here, and then up over the triangular spot and then back down to this spot. And I'm going to do a back stitch at the start and the stop. All right, so I've stitched from this bottom corner all the way up and around and back down to this corner. I did a little bit of a back stitch here and here because you want to kind of reinforce the pouch in those sort of stress points, I guess you could say, for the bag. And in the next step, I'm going to trim off these loose threads, and then we're going to install the snap right where the tip of the triangle, right at the tip of the triangle connecting to the pouch. So the way I like to install a snap is with a seam ripper, and the snaps that I use are 5/8 of an inch. So you want to make a hole about 1/2 an inch or 5/8 of an inch away from that point on your pouch. So I'm going to make a small hole right about there. And the thing with making a hole is that you can always make your hole bigger, but you can't go back. So you want to do this really carefully. So first I just start with just piercing the fabric with the pointy part of my seam ripper. And then, so there's also a little blade on the inside of the seam ripper too. So then I'm going to very gently push the blade down towards the pouch, and I'm going to try to cut like 3 or 4 threads. Okay, so I'm not making a huge hole, just enough of a hole to get my post through. So get the post and make sure it fits, and it does. So I've got the smooth part of the snap here on the top flap, and then that gets joined up with another pretty smooth piece that looks like this. So you just put it right on top. And then I'm going to grab my tool. So this is my snap setting tool. There's also posts and a small round base that you can use with a hammer. I find this is pretty easy to use. And you want to get your snap on the smooth part of the tool. You can see there it has 2 settings. It has a smooth round setting, and then it has a little flat raised setting. So get it in the smooth setting, and then you want to line up the pointy part of your tool right in the center of that post. So make sure it goes right in there, and then you just squeeze your tool as hard as you can and make a flower with that post. So you're kind of spreading that post open into a little flower shape. Next, what I like to do is fold over the flap however I plan to be closing it, and then I just push down, apply some pressure on that snap and kind of grind it a little bit so that it leaves a bit of a divot. I'm not sure how well that shows up on the camera, but there's a little bit of a divot there so I can see where this snap is going to hit the pouch. Okay, so now I'm going to find the more or less center of that divot, and I'm going to use my seam ripper again to pierce a small hole in there, but I don't want to pierce through the back of my pouch, right? I only want to pierce through these 2 layers. So take your seam ripper and just very gently push through, and then again we are trying to cut like 3 or 4 threads with a very gentle pressure using the blade that's on the inside of our little seam ripper tool. And next, we're going to use these 2 parts of our snap. And first we want to push the post through the hole from the inside out. And I can see that the hole is not quite big enough. So I'm going to come back at it with my seam ripper. And again, I'm just trying to cut like threads at a time. Okay, it's kind of a delicate procedure. When I tell kids, I'm like, pretend you're a surgeon and you have to very carefully make a little cut. So that's kind of how you do these posts. And I'm still needing a little more space. Okay, that ought to do it. Okay, any minute now. There we go. Got it. Okay. Finally, I got my post in there. Now, the other piece of this part of the snap goes over the post, and we are going to change the setting on the tool so that now we're using this kind of like raised flat side of the tool. And this is slightly tricky. You kind of want to bunch up the fabric so that the back of your snap is sitting really nicely on top of that little pad. Okay, make sure your fabric is out of the way so you don't end up pinching fabric into this snap that's not supposed to be in there. And again, we're going to make sure that the very pointy part of our tool, you can kind of see that, is lining up right in the middle of our post. And then we're going to crunch it down just like that. And again, the post gets split open and it makes kind of a flower in there. And then we make sure that the snap works. Every now and then there's a dud snap out there that doesn't actually work. So this one's good. Make sure it works. And then your pouch is done. It's so cute. That's all there is to it. I hope that you get out there and make a whole bunch of these super cute little pouches for yourself and to give away as gifts. Again, like I said at the beginning, I've got a free PDF download that I'm going to link to below. So if you want the exact pattern that I used to make this little guy, just follow the link and you can snag that for yourself. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the No Trace channel to get notified about all of our videos as they get released. We put out a new video every single week on zero waste living tips and zero waste sewing tips and tutorials. So I'll see you again very soon.